And we're live. Welcome to Earful of Dirt's Lineouts Extra Rugby Technique Series Part 5 with Gordon Hanlon, the Director of Rugby for TSV Handesheim. I think I got it. I don't know. Probably didn't. I think that was closer, but
No, that was actually pretty much spot on this time. You know, it's only taken 5, but we got there.
But if you're in Germany and you are a Bundesliga rugby fan, check out TSV Rugby. Gordon is right there, and he's getting after it, providing his club the most professional coaching you can find. All right, I've seen it. It's insane. It's insane. So moving on, we worked on offensive systems, bases, like we talked about space, and then we talked about 3 different forms of attack: the 2-4-2, the 1-3-3-1, and the 1-3-2-2. Well, we've had some discussions since the last one dropped, and we really need to start, I guess, talking about defense because, well, that's another thing that I think, as far as knowledge in the Americas for the casual fan, we really don't know. And again, just the reason why we started the series is that when you Google this stuff, there isn't a lot out there. So here we are. We're going to look at the Blitz defense, and then we're going to compare England and Ireland. So, Gordon, Blitz defense.
Yeah, it's not just in the US. So as you say, there's all information about attack shapes, but there's not really much about defense shapes and structures. Like you said a couple of podcasts ago, it's all about attitude and line speed.
But sort of a joke, but
yeah, no, it is. It's a simplified version of it, but it is true. But it's the shapes and the structures which allow you to do line speed, which allow you to launch off the line to really, really attack on defense. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a couple of little things which help. But yeah, so the Blitz defense basically is you have a ruck, and then your defense are lined up, and you're going as fast as you can to put pressure on the attack. That's the simplest form. What you're trying to do is you're trying to force them into mistakes, or you're trying to force them backwards. You're trying to get positive tackles. You're trying to have the attackers turn infield. This is all things about what the Blitz defense does. And it's basically it just shuts down the game. I guess it's like linebackers blitzing a quarterback. You know, his options get less and less with the more pressure he has.
So would this have something to do with what Italy did last Six Nations?
No, that was basically they wanted to negate England getting over the gain line every single time they carried the ball. Perfectly legal. Just it happened against England, so people didn't like it. You know, if Italy had done it to Georgia, there'd be no complaints.
So it's not about messing around in the offensive backfield per se, because so that's all. I mean, for everyone wondering, basically they didn't establish Italy didn't counter the ruck. They didn't establish the ruck against England, and so because of that, there wasn't an offside line, and their guy who was about to tackle could basically hang out with the scrum half.
Yeah, pretty much, and it wasn't the first time it was done either. The Waikato Chiefs did it on kickoffs, where they'd send a shooter, he'd make the tackle, and then the next 2 defenders would run around to the other side of the maul that the team tried to form and just sack it from the back. So it has been done before, but it's a little tactic which I don't think we'll see again for many years.
So, we talked about attitude and line speed a little bit, and we'll talk about that, I think, later. But let's go into, what kind of I sort of, one of the things that for me that I always stress about rugby, and we talk about it all the time offline, is fitness and how many guys, like how guys put the extra time into fitness. So what kind of fitness do you need to play a blitz defense?
It's actually a funny thing, because one of the problems you get is teams will say, hey, we can only blitz as fast as our slowest player. But over 5 meters, over 8 meters, your props can be just as quick as wings, if not faster, because they're more explosive. So you really need to get up off the line quickly. And it's a lot of like repeated sprints and less, less kind of like 70, 80 meter long distance things.
So going into that, I mean, we're talking about explosivity, and we can go into a fitness podcast, but not and I don't think that's necessary at this juncture for this. But so slowest player, just where do we go with that? So slowest player versus the fastest doesn't really matter, but you want to install this system really on a fit team, correct? Because I mean, we're playing fast lines, sort of derived from rugby league.
Yes, exactly. And it wants to be a team that is willing to get in the face of attackers. So it's a big mentality shift, because a lot of times you'll see it where guys will launch off the line, and then as soon as an attacker gets close to them, they will put both feet in the ground and then stop. So we really need to keep going forward, and that's the mentality: is you have to launch off the line. And it's all about having numbers on your feet. It's like the famous quote from Eddie Jones that the only statistics he's interested in is how quick you get up off the ground on attack and how quick you get up off the ground on defense. So it's all about having bodies on your feet, because you need to have confidence that you have extra numbers, if that makes sense. So if you have like 7 attackers and 3 defenders, you cannot blitz, because they'll just make 2 passes and they're gone. So we need to be square, and we need to be even numbers or more numbers, ideally.
So I just mentioned, this is derived from rugby league. So what brought this system, why did people bring this over and then establish its use?
Probably the first big one was Sean Edwards. He first took it to Wasps in 2005, I think. And they won some Heineken Cups. They won some premierships. And then from Wasps, he went to Wales, and then the Welsh defence became one of the leaders in blitzing. And he has a rugby league background. Les Kiss from Ireland, again, brought it from rugby league. Mike Ford, he brought it over from his league as well. And it is all just about numbers on your feet and a willingness to dominate the point of contact. Because if you blitz hard and then back off, you're just wasting energy, because you're literally just sprinting to step backwards.
Got it. So how do you, let's move to sort of, how do you recognize this system if you're watching a game? I mean, I can guess, just guys being in each other's faces for the most part.
Yeah, so you'll see it in the body positions and the profiles. So guys will be on the line square, they'll be pointing, and their first couple of steps will be hard and direct and forwards, versus like a jockey or a drift defense where the first steps will be across the field. The defenders will generally be positioned on the outside shoulder of the attacker, and then it will be, I guess we can get, like, if you look at most of the teams today, like the number 13 or the fifth defender out from the line will lead the blitz. So they'll be the first person up, kind of trying to shut down that wide option. And then the defensive line will fill in and get connected with that person who's leading the blitz line. So, but you're right, it'll be like, I remember last year, Ireland against England, anytime Johnny Sexton tried to do his wraparound passes, he was hit even before he got the ball. Again, the Lions had a really hard blitz line against the All Blacks last summer, should I say now? But yeah, you're in the face. You're very, very aggressive at the point of contact, and you're just looking to be dominant.
So, what would make, I guess, what kind of team would you want to install this on? I mean, we just talked about fitness, but I think fitness is, that's just a key, whereas there's other things that go into this.
Yeah, so ideally you need fitter forwards, but in the backs you have to have backs that could make decisions and read the attack. If you just send them shooting up and they cannot read the defense, or sorry, read the attack, they don't know what options are, then they'll just be wasting their time. But it really, like, any team can play any style of defense. Like, defense is very simple. The profiles, yes, they shift a little bit, but it's all about having your attitude. You were right. Line speed and attitude. But
Whoa.
We'll get to how we do it.
You can't say defense is simple, okay? Because then everyone, all the football defensive coaches come out, and then all these other rugby defense coaches come out, and then they're gonna say, "Hey, rugby's complicated." And it's like, yes, it's complicated, but it's also simple. So defense is all about assignments and sticking to your assignment, and I think blitz defense probably. If you don't hit your assignment, it creates a hole.
Yeah, exactly. And like, what we've really spoken about has been the why and what we're trying to do, but how we do it. It's like saying painting is simple. If you do paint by numbers, it's easy, but if you're trying to copy Monet, it's a little bit more complex. How we do it and how we generate that confidence in the teams to be able to blitz is the key, and that's the thing which I do not think is coached at all to a adequate standard. I think a lot of teams they talk about putting pressure and blitzing, but then they have no idea of how to go about doing it, and by that I mean, I guess I'll use your team as an example. So let's say you have a scrum, they attack in the backs, there's a tackle in midfield, and you're coming around the corner. Where do you go as the first defender?
The first defender coming around the corner, hopefully I don't know, at the blocker. I mean, the near blocker is where where you would go, since you're coming around the corner. You go to your blocker.
Yeah, so that's what the majority of teams do. They'll come in, they'll fill in just after the ruck, and then the second person. So you may stay there, and then the second person will come in beside you, and then when the third person comes, they may fill in to where the second was, and then everyone shifts across. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how do you generate any line speed then? How do you put any pressure on the number 10? If the two guys in front of him are shifting sideways, how do they get off the line quickly?
Well, you need to be able to backpedal. I mean, because blitzing is not, in this sense, it's probably not as zonal. Is blitzing in this sense a zonal concept, or are we talking more of a man concept?
I prefer it to be a zonal concept. the like man on man is again, you have to be very good to play that, and you have to be in certain areas. But I mean, the best way to describe it, like the easiest way to blitz, is if there's a breakdown between the 5 meter and the sideline. Every team can just go.
Yeah.
Every team can go. But it's when it gets into the middle of the field or when you have options left and right that it becomes more difficult. And especially in those transitioning from a passive tackle, it's very difficult to transition from a passive tackle into a blitz defense because, as you said, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
So we have to come up with ways of being able to do that. Number one is we have to slow down the ball at the point of contact. So the most important person and the most important thing to get a blitz defense is actually not when you're set up in position. And this is something which isn't coached and it's not really even spoken about, but a defensive shape whilst the team is attacking, if you know what I mean, if it's in broken play.
Yeah.
So let's say you have, I have an inside defender, I have an outside defender, and you need calls and you need a shape for that to happen. So one of the good ways you can call it, we always come back to A, B, C, or red, white, and blue, was let's say the middle guy makes a really low chop tackle. Well, his inside guy has to get over the ball.
Yeah.
And yes, if you don't steal the ball, you don't steal the ball. But your job there is to, one, pull in attackers, and two, to slow the ball down.
Yeah.
Like
So
if he's at the ruck making a nuisance of himself, you generally get one warning from the referee. When the referee says hands away, take your hands away. But you've slowed it down by a second or two, which has bought yourselves more time. Does that make sense?
yeah. So with the with the blitz defense, we're talking about slowing down the ball at the point of contact. So counter rucking. This is where, because you have a lot of coaches. I mean, on defense, I think one of the few. It's like this is what I've known playing rugby is like depending on the team sometimes, or not even depending on the team, just because of I think where our fitness level has been is like, hey, we're not going to counter ruck. We're just going to form the ruck on defense with like one guy, and so in this sense, you would need to counter ruck efficiently.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's it. Like that's when teams, they trust their discipline, they trust their confidence in their defensive ability to generate turnovers, not at the breakdown, but in forcing mistakes, in forcing knock-ons, in forcing kicks. So then we can start attacking from that, and that's the mentality that's needed. If you have a really big focus on throwing bodies into the ruck to try and steal the ball there, you'll never be able to blitz because you'll always be numbers down, which makes it really, really difficult. So that's why I talk about, your tackler, it has to be low, it has to put the attacker on the ground, and the second person has to slow the ball down. But when that call for hands away, they have to get out. You cannot stay there. You cannot double hit the ruck. You're just wasting energy and you're wasting time. That's why you see a lot of these days where a tackle is made, someone will hit it, they'll be cleaned out once, and then the number 9 has almost like clear space in front of them to play the ball. And that's how we help. That extra couple of seconds we buy there gives our other defenders time to get into position. But I think the single most important thing to be able to play a blitz defense is the outside defender. So let's say you're on my inside and you make the tackle. So too often, the outside guy is so focused on helping his friend that he turns in to try and make the tackle assist. And when he turns in, that means that the defender around the corner has to go to that post or that pillar. So then we're all flowing on the inside out, and it's very hard to blitz. But if that outside defender can change his mindset to say it's better for the team for us to lose 1 meter or 2 meters while he's forcing the tackle, for me to be set for the rest of our defenders to go, if that makes sense. So this guy, by him not getting involved, it also cuts out if the attacker gets an offload away or number 9 quickly picks and goes, then we have a post already set. And that gives us confidence for our guys coming around the corner or the guys filling in who, again, I think it's ridiculous and it's a waste of time if defenders fill in from the ruck out. If you're looking to generate line speed, the first defender coming around the corner, you have to go, where am I going to put the most pressure? And that's why I believe the first defender must go to the first receiver, to the first back. If they come back in field, and then the second defender, depending on how many people you have between the ruck and the number 10, can fill in there. But if there's no attackers there, there's no point in positioning yourself. You're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
So you really try and get set on that first receiver, and then he doesn't move. His whole focus is to watch the ruck, and as soon as that number 9 is passing the ball, he's putting pressure on the number 10.
So we're looking. Putting pressure on the 10, and then we're talking about space that's open. So there's really no point to a line there. And you said, you look at this as a zonal concept. So one of the things I look at in rugby defense is, to an extent, I want my team to be fit enough to where my fullback can hang out rather than having to be on the line.
Yeah.
So if this is done well, your fullback is not on the line all the time.
No. And again, you look at like a bigger defensive shape in that it's all about confidence. So the wide defenders have to have confidence. So generally, I'd recommend you split your midfielders, you split your wingers. So one midfielder, one winger on either side of a bank of forwards. So the 8 forwards just kind of like shift left and right, but go forward. Your number 9 is in behind directing, and then the fullback is behind that as well. And depending on which side the ball goes or where the attackers are, the fullback can come up in the line, and then the near side winger can drop back to cover. But it's just about confidence, yeah. And just generating that intent. So even though we've lost a couple of meters in this tackle here, our very next tackle, we are going to gain that back. It's kind of like 1 step backwards for 2 forwards.
Got it. Okay. So now let's. When you are coaching this, how do you break this down to first install and then let the boys run?
Well, you have to start with the micro skills, and unless you've done track and field, not a lot of people know how to generate quick, explosive power off the line. Like, how many guys get into the defensive line and their both feet are parallel to each other? You can't explode that way. So basically, is teaching them how to stand, how to be. So I call it like the 4 S's. So you want to be set, square, spacing's good, and then speed. And the speed part is you have to teach them how to run quickly. It's the single most important thing. And then just like the 90-60-90 we talk about on attack, it's the same thing on defense. They have to have a mindset where the first couple of steps, let's say three steps, really, really hard, big strides. Then they shorten their strides, they adjust. And then when they're within striking distance, they accelerate into the attacker again. And again, that's all about how to run, how to adjust your feet, and then how to go again, how to fire again. Because not a lot of people, I was never shown how to run like that when I played in school. But then my sister did track and field, and I used to go watch her and got talking to the coach, and he's like, "Yeah, this will be really good," and it does. It's it's not exotic or anything, but first, if you're going to blitz and you're going to be fast, you got to learn how to run, and you got to learn how to accelerate first. Other micro skills is, again, you don't want to launch into the tackle. You have to, as I said, you have to have the slow feet, and you have to try and target. If you're going to do a chop tackle, you have to have be really good on keeping your back straight and your eyes up. Because if you arch your back and your eyes are down, if they do any change of direction, will not be able to get a proper tackle on them. So I kind of like keep your T-Rex arm. So imagine your arms are in like little T-Rex. This is how compact. Yeah, it is. You don't want to be doing like a swan diving or butterfly swimming. You want to be nice and compact, and you want to really work on, when you get there, like a punch wrap. So your shoulder, your front foot, front shoulder makes contact, and then you punch your arms out and then wrap tightly. Aim from the hips downwards, and then just kind of tie up the quads and the hamstrings. And that's the tackle technique. And again, just start with one-on-one, nice and close. Just work on that punch wrap statically. When you've done that, work on one step. So I stand here, my back is straight, my arms are T-Rex-like. Punch wrap, take a step. And how you advance that is you start with an attacker standing up, and then a defender who is, because if they're having problems connecting the front foot, front shoulder, generating power, so you get your attacker to stand and put your defender laying on his belly beside him. And then the defender has to jump up, land on one foot, and on that one foot, he has to drive into the tackle. So you start to develop the muscle memory of your planted foot is where the force comes from, and not the back. And that's your basic one-on-one tackle technique. And from that, you build it up into, let's say you have one attacker and two defenders. So the two defenders will be parallel, a couple of meters apart. Attacker runs at one side of them. He makes a tackle. The second defender has to work around to try and slow the ball down. Again, just work through these things. Work on, for the guy trying to steal the ball, instead of reaching in with your hands, work on getting in close. Have your knees on the person on the ground, which is technically illegal, but most refs will let it go. And then getting your whole chest and your body over the ball. And that's how you slow the ball down. If you're just in there trying to tickle the ball with your fingers, you're not going to do anything. And it's just your standard progressions. Then you work into one attacker, three defenders. And now the outside defender has to really focus on being square and eyes up. And you just build up and up and up. And eventually you'll get to a stage where you could have maybe 4 attackers and 8 or 9 defenders. One phase you run in, okay, we get set. Next one runs in, okay, get set. Next one runs in, get set. So just so they know what it kind of feels like to move left and right around the field and to launch. And again, it's not 100% contact. If you want to wear tackle suits, you can. Just work on the organization, the mindset of it. And that's how you'll do, that's how you build up from a one-on-one tackle to a team situation. The other micro skill that's needed, or the skill that's needed, is to be able to identify when the ball has gone out the back or the attack has changed. So a really good way of doing this is, let's say you have 6 defenders, okay? Just all standing in a line parallel to each other, and they are facing 5 attackers at the front, and then 1 attacker behind those 5. So each defender has to line up with an attacker. And on go, the 5 attackers at the front, and again, just give them, the guys at the front just run into each other, gentle contact. The 5 at the front just run straight. The guy who's behind them has like a pad or something, and he can run anywhere he wants. So he can come in the middle, he can go out wide, he can do whatever. And his goal is to try and hit the point of contact at the same time as the 5 attackers in front of him. So now our defenders, we have to identify him, we have to look at him or her and say, okay, he's coming, he's yours, he's yours, he's yours. And then we, like every defender shifts one over or shifts left. And then do that on for points. And many times that someone gets through untouched, they get a point. You know, do that a couple of times. And the defense will get really good at shifting numbers across. They have to talk, they have to communicate, and they have to be specific. Okay, he's yours, like I'm on your inside, go, 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 that type of stuff. This kind of talking. But these things aren't really done. You know, we talk about defensive shapes and it's, hey, we're going to drift or we're going to blitz, but how we actually do it is not spoken about. So that's why I think it's.
I'll be honest, like when it like, so the first time I knew what kind of attack we were running, other than I think, you know, the second team that I played on, we just ran a lot of like 4-4 pod rugby, and it wasn't really like taught, like that's what we weren't really. I didn't know we were doing that, but looking back, that's what we were doing. It like there wasn't a lot of, I think in a lot of like amateur rugby, you don't see a lot of why, and I think that creates a disconnect. You know, this is what we're doing, this is why. And then defensively, I don't think I've ever, you know, until we started talking, I didn't know there was such a thing as blitz defense. We weren't it was like the thing is that we're coached was either we're not counter rucking or we are, and that was just, you know, make sure you tackle the guy. And that was pretty much it. So this is good. I mean, like there's a lot of why in here, and I think that's really important when it comes to trying to coach players. Like this is what we're doing, this is why, and you know, we're working on the how. So
yeah, exactly. The why is, if there's no why, it's just chasing the ball around the field, and that gets tiresome very quickly.
So what's the next step in this? So we're talking, you know, micro skills and establishing like parts of the shape. So
yeah,
so we've talked like, so forwards can be just as fast, but like roles in this, you know.
exactly, yeah. So transitioning, like the big thing is to be able to transition from the set piece to open play, and depending on where they attack. So if the opposition attacks wide, it's easy because we just form a line. But if they come back in or they hit the midfield, well, then we need a policy of both. Who folds? Which players stay? Which players go? Your 7 will probably be gone, but do you want your hooker chasing across the field, or you want your hooker to stay on the left-hand side? That kind of stuff. So having everyone aware of what their roles are. So let's say the front rowers are going to stay here, but you don't want to have all the front row together. So then you're going to have to do some adjustments. You know, after the first phase, the backs that have made the tackle, they shift left, shift right. And again, there's no set way, I believe, like this. It's depending on the quality of the athletes that you have. You know, we had when I coached in America, we had 2 loose head props that threw our lineouts. Our hooker couldn't throw, but he never missed a tackle, and he could scrum. So it's about it making the adjustments accordingly. Which defender and where do you want them? What are they strong at? Are they good? Can they cover outside, or are they just going to put big football style dominant tackles in? So that's very important, because when everyone knows where they should be, then they're more confident. And the more confidence you have in this defense, the better you're going to be at it.
I mean, this doesn't really have to do with defense, but I think, you know, when it comes to specific skills, like we tend to lack developing things, because I mean, for the longest time, I did not know that it's the hooker's job to throw the ball in on a line out. Why? Because just just because that's how it was always done, the guy who was playing 8-man, number 8 on my last team, was the one throwing the ball in, which also takes away when it comes to things like that, it takes away what the number 8 is supposed to do, in a lineout situation. Whereas, like, historically speaking, the hooker's supposed to, throw the ball in, and the other hooker lines up against him, So I think we're missing, like, there's a disconnect with what is supposed to occur when it comes to certain styles of coaching and development of even, amateur players. Then, because like that's the big thing in this, we're talking about in defense here. I like, at certain levels, how much defensive coaching is actually happening.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I think they're. I was just thinking there, like in the mid '90s to early 2000s in the US, there's a big influx of foreign rugby coaches, and I think the US game kind of, when they all left or went home, there was missing the passing on of that knowledge. So you're skipped kind of a generation, and you're left with some very 1980s style coaching. Even today, there's some pretty awful things I've seen, but it's getting much better with the advent of the internet and sharing of resources. We are getting a lot more technical and a lot more interested in the specific parts of it, which will help the game and the players to get better. But you're right. It's second last year I played, we had I want to say probably a 70-30 split from attack to defense. And I kept trying to say, it's like, well, hey, we defend more than we attack. Should we not practice that? And that's what it is. Like, you need to, when you do an attack game or drill, you have to have the same key defensive principles in play as you do when you focus on your defense. So then you build your habits. Like, we did a rough session last night. We did, again, we worked on individual tackle technique. We worked on our roles in open play, whether we stay or whether we go. From that, you progress to our ruck roles. So, as I said, that guy who, if he has gone backwards and he stayed at the post, what options does it allow our defense to do versus if he has had to come in and make the tackle? Because it's, Sean O'Brien is breaking through. And again, we worked on that, whereby one guy has missed the tackle, the outside guy has had to turn in. And when he turns in, now what happens? And again, you just go through this for like 10, 15 minutes. You go there, and attack. They're still working on their skills and their decisions, but the focus is for the defenders. So one whistle to go, a tackle gets set up, defense adjusts. And it always has to be fluid and living. So there's no point in just forming a breakdown and say, okay, or putting the ball on the ground and say, okay, defense, get into position. It's much better if you have, let's say you have two defenders standing flat, give the ball to someone, let him run into defenders, let the tackle be made, and let that form where you're going to start the exercise from. Because then the defenders start to recognize it, and it's much better. So from that, you have your point of contact. Sometimes we'll have a person outside, sometimes he'll be in the tackle. Defenders come around, blow the whistle, and go. And again, just touch, just run through. You have your different options. You can, if you want to do a heavier session, you can do contact, you can do tackle, but in kind of a controlled way, is that, we're not going to blindside anyone. And again, the focus has to be, okay, today we're going to focus on our chop tackles, or we're going to focus on our choke tackles, and you do these defensive drills, but then when you play games, you don't need a dedicated defense coach. But if you have two coaches, for example, one takes the attacking side, and you just keep constant feedback about attacking skills, early catch, early pass, get square, etc. But the defense guy, same thing. He's calling out names. You're doing like instant reviews. So if everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing, if I shout your name, okay, let me look around, let me adjust, let me make corrections, because you want the player to make the correction themselves, and then if they don't make the correction, a teammate to make the correction, and then finally, as a coach, you step in if you need to. But it's all about during the games, like just again, I do a lot of this, and I've done it for many years now. You put cones. I think we spoke about it. Put random cones in positions on the field. Two teams start on the sideline. You say go. The team on attack, call out a color or an area. That team, that's where the breakdown is. So the attack can get set. Blow your whistle again. Then the defense flows out. So the whole team is running. Actually, it's really good cardio because there's a lot of running. But they have to identify the attackers whilst they're getting in position.
Yeah.
Instead of just, okay, here's your static ball. We stand there. You stand there. Let's see what happens. And it's about hammering the principles, the why. Why are we doing this? What can we do in a game? Even playing touch. Like it's the same thing, if you're playing touch and someone steps into a gap and I touch you and then the outside person turns in, you're like, no, it's touch. We're trying to get square, we're trying to launch, we're trying to do line speed. And that's the thing, and I think in most trainings there isn't that mentality to focus on defense. When guys show up to training, they'll say, hey, today I'm going to focus on my passing. And they will. And the coaches will focus on the attacking brilliance. I even find myself like getting a little bit excited when, offloads and wraparounds happen. I go, oh, it's working. We're looking really good. But that same enthusiasm isn't there for defense. You have to really, really love defense. And it needs constant reinforcement and focus as well. That's the thing. Like you have to, at no point are you just practicing attack, or no point are you just practicing defense.
Yeah. So like, what is, the next thing? So we talk about like using pads, using bodysuits. Who has bodysuits? What is this voodoo?
Never seen the bodysuits?
I've seen the bodysuits, but who has bodysuits? I was like, so my last club is the first club. It's like so my first club, I mean, it's so preached in the US all the time about how cheap it is to get into rugby if you're like a player. But the more I think about it, is the better you're at it coaching, to an extent. I mean, the better your club is at coaching is like the more crap you have, which gets expensive. Because I think if you have bodysuits, that allows you to do things. If you have pads, that allows you to do more things. Just different techniques to be added to the, to the repertoire, the quiver, or whatever. And, my first club, they built a scrum sled. They didn't have any pads. My last club, we didn't have. My last club, we didn't have anything. Whereas this club I'm currently in, they have pads and a scrum sled. It was like, how long does it take to fund that? And then, I think if you have more resources, it allows you to do more things in a different way. And I'm not saying like having the resources will affect like your actual coaching, because you have to actually do the coaching that would allow you to use your pads in, team runs and starting out in defense and all things like that. But
yeah, when I was the technical director in Portugal, I had basically an unlimited budget, and
Nice.
I had a board member who loves everything new. So it's kind of like, here's the Rhino Rugby book. What do you want? And he wanted to get me like the turtle pads. Have you seen them? They're really good for high kicking. So it's like a massive wrap around, and you wear it on your back. So I can stand there, you kick the ball over my head, you run, you jump up, and it's a safe way of practicing kicking the or catching the ball in the air. But they're like $1,000 each. And we had from under sixes to seniors, we had 400 players, and he's like, "Oh, we can get them for seniors. We get it for under 18s, under 16s." No, no. I mean, it's you. I came a point where I was like, let's just focus on quality coaching, and the rest is all. It helps. There are specific situations where that would be good for, but most of the time, the equipment is just there to be sold. Um, a couple of pads to hit, and some cones are really all you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that about wraps up this episode. Gordon, is there any, alibis for this or?
Yeah, actually, I guess if you're watching the Six Nations this weekend, we should talk about this. The difference, so both Ireland and England will run a Blitz defense, but both are very different. So Ireland will have a lot of pressure from the inside to about the sixth defender, or roughly the number 13. And then they'll play a lot softer in that the outside defenders will hold their feet a lot more. So if you watch Ireland play, you'll see the 13 or you see that fifth or sixth defender up being the first one, and then it kind of trailing off a bit. I guess like one of the arches on the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
That was what it would kind of look like. And then out wide, they play a little bit softer. They'll play some drift. Whereas England they do 100% speed, 100% blitz in their defensive line. So their wingers are blitzing up really, really quickly. And what they're going to try and do is they're going to try and shut down all passing options. But like the game against Wales 2 weeks ago, or was it last week?
2 weeks
Maybe
ago.
last week, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Teams can find the space and their skills are good enough under pressure. There's plenty of room to attack out wide, and you can beat the winger. And then it's kind of like a snowball effect. Then you're just constantly rolling downhill, and you'll make a lot of meters very quickly. Again, where it's susceptible, if like England, they have such line speed, chip kicks in behind, grubber kicks in behind, or if they get an offload at the point of contact, then you're going to find space in behind. So does England have a lot of space on that second level, which is teams haven't been able to exploit it yet. I think the All Blacks will, but yeah, but it's yeah, I guess that's you'll see if you watch the Six Nations. Look for Ireland, look for England. Look at the line speed. I don't know, like what else there is really. Even our talk on defense is a lot less structured than our attack one.
Well, I mean, like there's some reason for that, and then there's there's other reasons for that, right? Like
yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely gonna be watching the so England plays Scotland this weekend, and then Wales plays. Ireland and Wales meet at the Aviva, so we'll see two. I think I don't know. I'm not really sure how Scotland is doing, other than that they're able to force guys, especially when they're on the attack. At least against France, they're able to force penalties to occur so that they are, Laidlaw just kicks from anywhere and, scores 20 points with his boot. But yeah, I think those are going to be two games to watch, because I think there is specific overmatch. So you'll be able to recognize the defense and offensive systems a lot, I guess, easier than is normal.
Yeah.
For American fans, I think really I couldn't really tell, but I think Argentina 15 was blitzing most of the match against the U.S. and that for anyone who wants to watch that, that is on ESPN3 in the replays. If you search through them on demand, you can see Argentina 15 versus the United States at StubHub Center. So check that out. They played really good defense. It took us a while to get through it, and that's what happens when it's a 17-10 score, of course. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks to talk defense again, and I think there are other defensive systems that are more complicated than this to an extent. This is one of those styles of defense that requires, I guess, a lot of fitness, but a lot of intellect to be able to establish your zonal concept and, execute well. Because I think you can, I mean, this, you've coached for a long time. You can play a blitz style defense and still get run over.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is. You're one missed tackle from a try, potentially.
Yep. So that about wraps it up. Check out on podcast should be tomorrow night is Dan Brown. My co-host is going to have he's spoke with Nishant Nahariat of Rugby United New York. So that should be on our SoundCloud page at Earful of Dirt and on iTunes and pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast. So if there's a place that you get your podcasts and we don't have it, send us an email and we will upload our RSS feed so that it starts going through there. And this podcast will be out this weekend if you were unable to catch it live. So that about wraps it up. And the show is back Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific time. Gordon, where can they find you? Heidelberg, but that's not
yeah, I'm on Twitter at Flash Gordon with 3 A's, I believe, or maybe 4. I get confused sometimes. And that's the main one, really. You can. I'm generally linked in any of the Earful of Dirt podcasts that are these ones that I put out, so you should see me there if you get in touch. I like to talk about food and barbecue. And my dogs, really. That's and rugby, of course, But yeah, that's it, really.
All right. Well, and that's it for us. See you guys later.
Okay. See you.